No, I'm just gonna take 20 more minutes and figure this out. Just everybody just hold on a sec. I don't know what the hell's going on there. Yeah, that might be easier. I don't know why this isn't working. Yeah, Jilayna, it's all you.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
But hopefully we can just say, what does that say? You know, read it out loud.
Yeah, let's scoot over here.
And I love it there. Oh my God, I love happy guys. That's what it is. Okay. Just take yourself off mute on there so you can talk while needed.
What's that? Are we off mute? All right, I think we're good.
Shall we start?
Yeah. Ready? Good.
Okay, hey everybody. So obviously topic is kind of a brief overview of new construction. So we don't want to get too into the weeds. More or less just kind of a rough layout of what's involved in the process and an emphasis on, I guess, from the builder side of the table, because we were talking about this, putting it together. We kind of approached it from at least Jilayna, myself, and Nicole, I know, has had experience working on the builder side of the table. So I wanted to share some sort of insight from that side. And with that knowledge, it helps you gain a better understanding of how to kind of set that expectation for your buyers that are either building or buying completed new construction. And if you do it right and you get even just a basic knowledge level for it, it's really the easiest paycheck you can make in this business.
100%.
By far. So to start out, there are three. Oh, come on. Oh, next slide, please. So let's talk about the three different distinct types of new construction. Custom is probably the most overused, if not misused, term in new construction. So a custom build, what is a custom build? You guys can read this as you go, but I'll kind of just speak over it. The custom build is essentially a buyer building a home to suit a specific piece of land that they already have in mind. The key distinguishing factor to a custom build is the first thing is you will sit down with either an architectural engineer with a builder, or if you can go to a design company. There's a few differences, but you will sit down and from the mind of the buyer, you can come in with a sketch on a cocktail napkin and sketch, kind of describe what you want to build, and they will sit down on a system and design a plan for you. That's going to cost about $5 to $20 grand just to start. And then at the end of it, if you go through a builder, they will tell you that they keep the rights to those plans. So either you build it with us or you don't build it.
Depending on the route you go with custom build too, sometimes clients can purchase their own lot and pick their own builder and then do the custom build from there. Or you can reach out to custom builders that your clients want to work with, and they should have some pocket listing of lots that they already have secure, maybe some tear downs or something like that.
Yeah.
Just raw land that they can use for your clients' new construction builds. So
That's
if
a
your
good point.
clients are really looking to do everything like hands-on from start to finish, in terms of floor plan, obviously finish levels, how the lot is going to be, how the property is going to be situated on the lot, right? Custom build is the route to go.
Yeah, so before you get to that point, the builder is going to get a baseline for obviously what style of home do you have in mind and what's your price point. More often than not, 99 out of 100 buyers from that point, the builder is going to say, okay, great, you've described this, here's your rough budget. Here's 4 or 5 plans that we've built that are really in line with kind of what you guys are talking about. This one seems like it's going to fit you guys' needs the most, and we can tweak the 3 or 4 things that you've mentioned are kind of important to you, save you the hassle of having to design a whole new plan. So that's why I say a lot of people end up falling into the custom, or the semi-custom category. It's extremely rare that somebody actually builds a custom home. So semi-custom is usually where you go, and in that realm, they're going to say, like I said, here's a plan that we can tweak a little bit. And then from there, here's 8, 9, 10 of our distributors that we use for finishes. You can go pick from them. If you want to do anything above and beyond that, we'll price it out for you. But the kind of key component of that is with that budget and with that home, they'll price out, okay, here's what your finishes are going to look like, and they'll give it to the buyer in terms of cost per square foot. So you granite, you get $40 a square foot, go pick what you want. Carpet, you get $13 a square foot, pick what you want. Like I said, anything else, they'll price that out. As opposed to a options builder, what people call a cookie cutter builder, let's be honest. Your national or large regional builders, yeah.
My homes.
So that's why we say these are, 90% of the homes that we tend to deal with, where the whole business plan is build you as much home as we can for the least amount of money. So everything is already done. The answer to can we change something is almost always going to be no. And the selections and finishes are predetermined, if not just get, broken down into packages. And that's done to save money. So the cost of developing those floor plans and engineering that home is going to be split between the thousands of other people that build them. That's why you can buy that home at an expedited, almost assembly line like process, but your options are going to be few and far between. Okay, any questions on those?
I just want to add a comment here. The trend since COVID, when we had the building frenzy happen during COVID, the trend for all national builders has really gone to make packages. So before you might have had more freedom with your selections, now you're going in and you're getting a new cabinet package. And you have like 1 of 3 to 5 different color cabinet options. And along with that goes certain options for what your granite countertop is going to be, what your hardware is going to look like on all of your cabinets, and flooring packages. You might have like a carpet option or an upgraded like LVP option or something like that. So anytime you're working with a national builder now, which is the most common form of new construction sale, plan on the fact that your clients are going to have pre-selected packages to choose from.
More than likely, yeah. And there's a few differences in terms of pricing out things on the custom side versus the production side that we'll circle back to it. If I forget, will you please remind me, Jilayna, because good chance I will.
I'm going to go to the next slide.
Okay.
Bar on the side for Zoom. Then you're facing the group won't show, at least on your screen. So just go up to the top of the handy there, and then just do the smallest bar on the left-hand side there.
Me and you are
There you
putting things
go.
together.
We're all learning today. Okay. Differences between to-be-built and spec homes or inventory homes or any number of names that builders call their completed homes. To be built, like I said, you'll generally go in, pick the lot, and then they'll have specific plans within their inventory of plans that are designed to fit each lot, or certain plans that will fit on specific lots throughout that community.
Yeah, when you see this being built on the MLS, it's typically the semi-custom and the options builders, that's the umbrella that usually falls under. Then to go back to that too, just with the semi-custom home, that's usually, like I'm working on one right now, they have 2 floor plans to choose from, they can tweak them a little bit, hasn't been built yet, so they really do get involved from start to finish. And so that's kind of the biggest difference between that and the options builder. But when you see it on the MLS, that to be built, those are usually the 2 categories that those properties will fall under. And always make sure you call the builder too, or the builder rep, listing agent, whoever's listed on there, and see if they've started construction on the process too. Because sometimes you call and they've already framed it up. They're already, maybe sometimes they've even taken as far as actually doing certain finishes of the property. And that can vary. It's just gonna be property dependent, and so you have to take it as a case by case basis. So make sure you're calling the listing agent, checking on that property if your client's interested.
Yeah, and the other piece of that too is a lot of times you'll see, photos of a similar completed home that aren't representative of this one. So knowing where it is in the process, also usually one of the first questions a potential buyer is going to have is, well, can I make any changes to it?
Right.
And where it is in that process heavily dictates whether or not you can or can't.
I'm gonna add a couple quick things to this too. So if you're,
At, new developments on the MLS, and you might see that one is listed as to be built. They're telling you one of the floor plans that's optional on that lot. It does not mean that you have to select that specific floor plan. In some cases, it does. That's why you want to be able to distinguish the difference and ask questions of the builder rep or the builder themselves. They may be listing it as a to be built to let you know you have the option to come in and choose finishes, but their intention is to build that plan on that lot as a spec home if nobody comes in to customize the process. So that's why we want to kind of distinguish the difference between to be built and spec homes. There's some gray area here where a to be built could border on the line of semi-custom and at the same time on the line of a spec home. So there's some gray area there.
Cool. I thought that was interesting. That's all DR Horton is doing now. Is
Yeah.
good, great timing. That all Horton is, is doing now is spec homes, where 2 years ago you couldn't find a spec home anywhere.
correct.
And it was a,
Yep.
18-month wait list to build, and now they're just completely changed that model to, we're just gonna build inventory homes. They're trying to eliminate that, month, 2 months of the design process and change requests.
Yeah.
So,
You cannot go in there and just pick whatever lot you want right now. If you are
Yeah.
looking at your Horton homes, you
Come in
can.
and they will tell you, here are what we have available, and based on need, here are the next couple lots we will be releasing, so. Okay, you want me to move on to the next one?
sure. Okay, so coming up is just kind of a broad timeline, I guess. So you can at your leisure, read through these as you go. I guess I would almost boil it down to if a traditional build is 6 months from start to finish, that first month or two is going to be just doing the design work. All of the structural stuff is done when you sign the purchase agreement. So you sit down in the builder's office, pick the floor plan and the lot that you're gonna build. That stuff's gotta be finalized before it goes into the city for permits. Once that's done, they can't be changing the foundation, major structural stuff without a huge headache from the city, because the city's gonna charge them anywhere from 10 to 15,000 just to build your house or to approve the plan. So
Yeah,
once,
builders won't even entertain it,
yeah,
so.
that's gonna be a hard no. If you want to go back 3 weeks later and say, you know what, we decided to do the fancy master shower or Jack and Jill bath, fine, but the major structural stuff, that's all done right up front before you sign anything. That next month or two is the design center meetings. They'll usually have a specified warehouse almost. This, a lot of these national builders especially, where you'll have 3 hours to go and pick out your selections. Once that's done, building starts, the hole is dug, foundation's poured, and you're off and going. So like I said, at that point, every builder is going to try to discourage you making any changes. If they will allow it, they're going to charge you to do it. So that's just something to prepare your buyers for, because that's one of the most common problems, is either misunderstandings about that up front or poor communication, where that, they're maybe not clear on what that deadline is. So if they don't, if they know going in that, hey, once you sign this and once your permit goes in, you're done. This is the house that you're building. So
I want to add a couple of quick things into this. Okay, so
If you have ever gone through a new build process with any of your clients, you will know they are going to drive by that lot on a weekly basis to see exactly what is happening with the home.
mhm,
And we're gonna talk about this later in the slide deck about setting an expectation for that with your clients. The reason I put kind of a timeline on here, 1 to 2 months, is for the first couple months, it is going to look like absolutely nothing is happening with that build, and your clients are gonna say, why isn't anything happening? I'm driving by
all the
and
time, and I
don't
don't see any progress on my house. This is one of the things we'll go over when it's setting expectations.
We need to know that those first couple months, it's going to look like absolutely nothing is happening, and it is because it is going through the permitting process.
I was gonna say a big piece of that is waiting on the city to
Correct.
just stamp that, yeah, you can build this house. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned, that's a great point, because we're gonna circle back to, I guess, kind of our role in the process, but I think we can go to the next one. Okay, we kind of discussed the design process, like I said, most of them will just say, here, here's your 3 hours. That's all you get. And it's just the people on the purchase agreement. Don't bring your kids, don't bring your friends. Your in-laws aren't welcome to come.
This is
You
for the
have-
options though.
Yeah, this is,
Yeah.
you know, your carpet, your cabinets, your countertops, lighting, all that stuff. It's just almost always just the people on the purchase agreement and that 3 hours. They don't have walk-in hours. They don't want 12 people there. You know, with kids running around while you're trying to design your house. So you'll have 3 hours and they're usually pretty strict on making sure that you adhere to that. Yes, yeah, so I'll tie that in here. So when on the production side, when you're pricing out a home originally to either for the purposes of making an offer or to, you know, outright sign a purchase agreement, on the production side of things with your national builders, my advice is to pick the floor plan in the lot that you want, and then when you're going through each of those options, all the flooring, cabinets, lighting, countertops, all that stuff, add in, you know, build the dream house. Add in everything you want there, and then make an offer based on that total price. From there, you can go to the design center and scale back what you don't necessarily need, but the builder's going to negotiate with you on that total price. So build the dream house with a production builder. On the semi-custom side where the options are endless, I would say absolutely do not do that, because price can get out of control real fast when the sky's the limit.
Yeah, make sure your clients go in there with a budget and
Yeah, and a good builder will know to, you know, focus on what are your priorities in this house.
Right.
Where if you walk into a Lennar sales center, throw everything in there. Okay, next, plumbing and electrical, HVAC rough in. So that's gonna be right after all the framing is done. And guys, a lot of things or excuse me, one thing that a lot of people don't necessarily know is that all of these builders, their contractors and the people that are actually building the house do not work for that builder. The only person that, you know, out of the 30 that are going to be building that house that actually work for the builder are the construction manager on that site and the sales rep. That's it. So your foundation, your framing, electrical, plumbing, roofing, siding, everything is all done through subcontractors, and they'll do work on 4 different builders within a 30-mile radius. So it's useful information to have when potential buyers are starting to say, well, which builder do you prefer? Which one is better? I've been reading reviews. The same people build all of them anyway. They really do. So you're picking on lot and I guess maybe incentives at that point. So there's not too much to distinguish between all those builders. That and Minnesota building code is such a high standard that there's really very little difference between a Lennar house and a $3 million custom build.
The exception that I would say, and I don't even know if exception is the right word, but just one other thing to take into consideration is that
You buy a house from Loomis, you know, they have their plans set out regardless of the contractors that their subcontractors they're working with, they're building to the specs. Whereas at my homes, they might do enamel painting on site as part of their standard finishes. So when you are shopping builders, just look at what is included as standard with the build, because that's going to make a difference. Even if they use the same contractor, one might be priced a little higher, but their standard build comes with more included with it. So always look at the spec sheet or the standard process for building.
That's a great point, Jilayna. And if you ask too, and one thing I would encourage is ask, you know, when you ask them to, you know, put together a hypothetical house for you. You know, here's what the buyers have expressed an interest in building. Can you price that out and put it together for me and send it over? It'll itemize what's included, what's added, and what that costs. And you can shop that around. That's incredibly rare that they won't give that to you. So great point.
Yeah, and then that's the factor in the variations of the timeline, is because so many of the contractors are being used by all the builders. It's really when they can get them in scheduled to do the work. And then if there's the next step in a process that one builder offers enamel trim and doors and the other does not, that kind of changes the level of paintwork that has to go into it and might take a week longer. So.
Well, the other thing too is if one builder does it, they spend so much time, energy, and resources knowing what their competition is doing. If one builder offers something, it's a week or two before everybody else is saying, okay, well, we'll follow suit or do something similar.
And every one of these stages, I'm just moving along for time, every one of these stages, just so everybody knows, goes through an inspection period. Your frame is inspected multiple times, your roof is inspected, your, sheeting is on the outside, and tieback wrap for moisture is done and inspected. Rough ends, like when electrical, plumbing, and HVAC work is done, there's an initial inspection for that. So every step of these, of the way, is inspected, just in case your clients want to know what that process looks like.
Yeah, so at all those steps, they'll do a walkthrough with that construction supervisor for the neighborhood, who they'll get to know throughout the process. That's gonna be really their point of contact. So they'll walk through. You guys, you don't have to be there. You can. It's actually kind of educational, at least to do a few of them. And depending on your buyers, if you feel like they might appreciate that attention, then go. But otherwise, it's kind of a lot of work that you just kind of stand there silently as they point out their outlets. So you don't have to go there. And then the city inspects the home at each of these points too.
So you have your rough-in inspections, and then you have your final inspections. When your final inspections are like, once they have all the electrical outlets connected and cover plates on, making sure all that's good. Once all the plumbing fixtures are connected, so that water can run through and that appliance or whatever could be used, that's a final inspection. So each of those things goes through a final inspection stage too.
And one of the biggest reasons for potential delays, if at one of these stages, the inspector's 2 weeks out, tough luck. Your closing just got moved back. So we'll circle back to that too, but it's just, something to prepare your buyers for. When a builder tells you our build time is 6 months, your buyers need to prepare, or, to have something to do for 8 months. Yeah, a backup plan for 8 months.
We're at the mercy of those inspectors.
Absolutely.
Inspect all the rough-ins, we'll give you finals on electric.
And to be fair, usually that's,
What'd you say?
to be fair, usually it's pretty smooth. But-
There are occasions depending on, number of bills going up where it is a little bit of a backlog.
Okay. New construction warranties. This one's pretty easy because it is universal throughout Minnesota. Every builder has to offer this, and if the builder goes out of business 6 months after your house is done, the state of Minnesota takes it over anyway and assigns it to another builder, usually Lennar. So the simple way to explain this is it's 1 year workmanship, so your trim drywall. That's why at 11 months after you close, they'll come back through the house, give you a roll of blue tape to stick on things. It's usually nail pops in the drywall. Maybe floors have shifted a little bit, stuff like that. So that's all covered under the 1 year. And it's gotten to a point where it's universal now, where every builder will do that 11 month, and they'll just flat out tell you, keep a list over that first 10 months, 11 months. Don't call us a dozen times throughout that first year. We'll come back after 11 months and we'll take care of everything and make sure you're happy. And they're, to be fair, usually really good about that. 2 years is going to cover all of your HVAC, your heating, cooling, that is HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and then 10 years for your major structural stuff. So essentially foundation is what that's going to cover. Wisconsin's a little bit different because they give builders 2 options, and it's something that buyer would have to sign. I guess both buyer and the builder would have to agree to which warranty they're going to receive. But Minnesota's 1, 2, and 10. That's what you get. Yep.
Wisconsin was pretty interesting.
Which is why that's not a link that you click on, but that is the link that you go to if you want more information. That is from one of the warranty companies that provides the warranty for the new construction homes. There are 2 options: the standard warranty, which is just like Minnesota's, and then another one where it's more of almost like a limited service warranty. And they get to determine what the level of coverage is. And it's only available on homes priced under $2 million for this limited one on the bottom. So if you're selling in Wisconsin, that's just a little piece of extra information for you.
And these warranties do transfer too, guys. So if you're buying a 1-year-old previously owned home, those warranties are still going to transfer to your buyers. Okay. Expert negotiation. I think a big misconception is that prices in terms of new construction are more rigid than they really are. Everything's negotiable, guys. Those sales reps have the exact same license we do. They have to bring every offer to their seller just like we do. So if you don't ask, you don't get it. this is where I kind of want to delve into a little bit of maybe how I've had success or when I was on the other side of the table, how I would suggest that you
I have a
go
list
about
right
negotiating. Oh, you do? Okay, then we'll circle back to that. Okay. Anything?
Talking points, so these were talking points that, you know, you could use with your clients when explaining to them why it's better for them to have buyer's representation.
Yeah.
Think about it this way, if you're in a divorce, you don't use the attorney that your ex is using, right? Like you
need to have your own representation, what's in your best interest. Well, that's what point 2 is about, representation on your side, because the builder rep represents the builder. They are a fiduciary of the builder, and it is their obligation to do what is in the best interest of the builder, and that is to sell you the most expensive home they have to offer with the least amount of contingencies, right? So, having someone who can navigate new construction for you is really important, and they're always going to be someone who's working on your side.
And one step further, you know, unlike us, those builder reps can only represent that builder's product. So their sole incentive is to sell you a house for as much money for that builder. Good point.
I said too, the best way to get in front of these objections is make sure you're asking your clients when you're pre-qualifying them initially, if they're interested in new construction properties. I'm sure it's happened to more than just me, where you follow up with somebody and said, yeah, I built new construction. Where, you know, it probably fell back on me for not having that conversation saying, you know, hey, how many sets are you looking for? What areas are you looking? Are you looking at pre-existing properties and new construction? And if they are looking at new construction, having that conversation, setting those expectations, and informing them on how you can help them through that process too. If you're not having a conversation, they might just look at the building and walk right in one of the models.
Yeah, good point, Ian, because I mean, if somebody expresses interest in new construction, they've pretty much decided they want something new. It's pretty rare that somebody's gonna go shop around a couple builders and then buy a house that was built in 1968.
Right.
They pretty much decided that they want new, they want shiny, they want warranty, they want everything that comes with new construction. So, yeah, great point. So yeah. Express your value and that you represent the buyer, even, it's like I said, there's a, you know, big misconception both in the real estate side and on the public side that what the builder's terms are is what's set in stone. And that's absolutely not the case.
Right, when it comes to guidance through the build process and knowledge of the local market.
This goes back to what Andy had just said about a builder's representation. That's the sole job of that representative, is the builder. Whereas what is ours? We are out in the market looking at existing homes all the time. We're touring multiple neighborhoods for new construction. We're the ones who really have the pulse of what's happening in the market. So we're the ones who can speak to our clients about, you know, what the potential for growth is in some of these areas. You know, what might be a good investment now if their plans to stay in their house for the next 10 years. Does it make sense that they would spend an extra 30,000-40,000 with the builder to have the basement finished if they know they're gonna need it and finance it into their purchase versus have to come up with the hard cash for that 5 years down the road. There's lots of factors that go into that based on what the need is of the buyer and then what's that investment look like for them. If they have to sell in 5 years, are they gonna get their money back? What's happening in those areas? Whereas a builder rep, they don't care about whether you're gonna be underwater on your mortgage in 2 years, 3 years, if something happens in that area. Their job is to represent the builder and sell it.
They're gonna be in a different neighborhood in 12 months.
Correct.
Couldn't care less.
I think one of the best ways to construct this conversation too is by giving them specific examples. Like, Jilayna, you have a huge win for new construction in the last month. Maybe talk about that.
Yeah, so in August, I had cash buyers who were looking for new construction. And we had our heart set on a lot that was private and wooded. And we were able to find a spec home that had been sitting for 5 months completed with Lennar. And it had a ton of upgrades built into it because the builder was specking out what type of upgrades buyers are interested in. And Andy will go into more detail about where the builder's margins are and how that is a negotiating tip. But because of my experience in new construction, I did know that with some of the upgrades. So I was able to negotiate $57,000 off of that new construction purchase for them and close a week. So, and
Still
that's
apply it to that
building.
too, I mean, they're not gonna think about walking into a model
No.
or talking to a builder without you.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's an extreme, and that's a big win.
Yeah,
So
winning in new construction,
Right.
so, and those are deals out there right now, those are real
Right.
deals.
So you give examples like that to your clients, they will not call anybody else, they'll call you if they wanna go look at construction.
And, our last slide will talk a little bit about, incentives for builders. Now, in this case, it's the cash buyer, didn't have to worry about appraisal, we could close quickly, that was probably part of the factor as well. Coming up to the end of the quarter, builder wanted to make sure that they were posting what their, profit was gonna be for the company going into the year, so knowing kind of how all of those factors collided are what allowed us to move forward with what we did on
This
this
property,
property.
and the more experience that you have in new construction,
or the more education you take in about how this process works, the more you can speak that language fluently to your buyers. And it's a win-win for them and for you.
What do we got next?
Jumping the gun. There we go. Ian, you wanna talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, expectations for sure. So everything that we talked about, really, it's a good rule of thumb, just so you're aware of those timelines, but you need to set those expectations that if the builder tells you it's 7 to 8 months, add a month or two on top of it. And then also, like we talked about too, a lot of this just doesn't, a lot of this is out of our control. Like you said, the inspectors, permits, weather, builder schedules, material delays, all of that plays a huge factor into the timeline of their build getting done. So
Yeah,
make sure you're
there's-
having that conversation, because especially too, when you go into a new construction meeting, they get thrown everything, including the contract. I mean, they talk about a ton of information, so if you can prep them as much as you can prior to that meeting, that's one of the best things that you can do. So then they can really focus on what you should be focusing on and prioritizing, which is usually, typically around budget, what they actually want in the house. It allows them to be excited and not overwhelmed. And it's a huge time saver for you if you're not, if you are setting those expectations too.
That's a big advantage of doing a price out first with the
Yeah.
builder. Kind of familiarize the buyers with what they're getting into, without, like Ian said, just throwing them into an hour and a half session of signing a purchase agreement on a new house. Do a price out, ask to do a lot hold, almost every builder will do it for $500,000 refundable. They won't even cash it. They just want to see you write it and show a little good faith. So that's always,
something I will add here into the
Timeline is, learned this from experience representing a builder and all the calls we've got. When the final grading and sod in the yard was not going in when the new homeowner felt like it should. Just so everybody knows, that is weather dependent, and we have truck weight requirements in the state of Minnesota where trucks cannot even travel on the road
Till
until a certain
June.
point, based on softness of the road or driving conditions. And if they are gonna be working in a mud puddle because we've had an incredibly wet spring, there's a delay that's going to happen with getting the final grade and sod on your yard. So even when you're setting expectations for timeline, make sure you include some of those timelines that are actually post-closing of the property.
Yeah.
So it'll just save you a headache in the long run, and you're communicating clearly with your client.
Yeah, so going into budget to just prep them that, so typically with these options built are most common. When you walk into that meeting, they're gonna tell you, yeah, we're probably gonna be in the ballpark of 560, 570. But as soon as you start going over finishes and they talk about allowances and then your clients go into what they want, do they want this, do they want that, do they wanna add this to the master bedroom? That number goes up, it only goes up from there, it doesn't go down. So make sure you're telling them, hey, allocate 10 to 20% of that total cost. And that's a pretty good rule of thumb if you're doing this semi-custom where you can really kind of add some bells and whistles. Where if you're sitting down with your options builder, tell your clients to add everything they want, like Andy mentioned earlier, kind of their dream home, add all of it. Get that itemized list. And then if it's not the number they want, then you can start taking things away and say, yeah, we don't need this, we don't need this. We can prioritize these items and then get to that number that that they want to be at or under.
I can't stress that enough. you know, you might be sitting there with a buyer whose budget is 500,000, all of a sudden they're priced out at 525, 530. But they know that they're gonna go to the design center. They know that they don't need the level 6 cabinets. They know they don't need quartz in every surface in the house. If they know that, they're gonna go to the design center, they're gonna leave with a credit more than likely, versus being excited, signing a purchase agreement, and then being devastated at the design center because they picked $80,000 worth of hardwood flooring and tile. So it's a much better experience, I promise you. Have them build everything in, knowing that they're gonna go in and scale back a little bit if they need to. And I'd say probably half the time they end up going to the design center and finding stuff they love and just saying, you know what, fine, we'll keep what we had in there. Great, but it's much more fun than getting another bill for 50, 60, $80,000. So I
If you
can't
want to
stress
raise
that enough.
glass tile, that's gonna
Yeah.
need special installation, an extra setting. Yeah, that's gonna cost you an outlay.
Prepare your clients for if they have selection process, you know, what some of those options are gonna be, so.
Communication and visits. This one can go either way, I guess. I think the biggest issue that realtors can create in the new construction process is trying to almost be overactive, trying to add value where it's not needed, because it really is an easy process if you do it right. So a lot of realtors end up just kind of interfering and creating problems where there don't need to be. In most cases, you're better off setting the expectation up front for your buyers, and then kind of managing that handoff to the builder, staying in contact, of course. And then, like I said, show up at those scheduled inspections, stay involved in the process, but don't interfere. You don't need to be an interpreter from the sales rep to you, to your buyer. If you're included on all the conversations and if problems arise, fine, handle it. But
Yeah, there's some clients too where you can really kind of be hands off.
absolutely,
Like you
yeah,
can read that pretty well, but yeah, there's some where you probably know it's a good idea to be at all of these inspections and checkpoints. And being that second, or that voice of reason, if you think they might teeter out their budget, during the design process or something like that.
yeah. At that point, the builder rep's not getting paid if they don't build it either. So
Right.
they're on the same team as you.
Yep.
In a lot of
They're
cases,
going the same
I'm
direction.
paying you to stay out of the way.
Exactly.
I've got it from here, yeah. So,
Moving on, if you're ready to move on.
yeah, this is great. Okay, are we doing okay on time?
We're good.
Speed it up.
Your tactic, this is great.
Okay, so there's definitely a right and a wrong way to negotiate with a builder. Like I said, everything's negotiable, but if you understand where the builder makes money, you're gonna have a lot more success. Your buyers are gonna have much better experience. When you see the base price of a builder's home, they've got 6 homes ranging in different square footage. Starting at $400,000, for example. There is very, very little margin in that for the builder. Probably single digits. A semi-custom builder works on 10 to 12%, 15 is a home run. So your production builders are going to be less than that. There's very little money there. So if you see a house that's just finished with the basic stuff that's included, they are going to be very apprehensive to negotiate with you on that house. If they do, it's because they have to. Like Jilayna said, they're usually publicly traded companies. They've got investors. So if you're in the right place at the right time, and it's usually like that week where they were just told at a sales meeting, hey, we've got to sell some of these, you might get a deal. But otherwise, chances are not. If you are looking at building a home or purchasing a spec home, and you see that price out sheet and it's a $400,000 home with $100,000 in options that they want $500 for, those options and upgrades, there's usually a 30 to 40% margin. So a house like that, you can really take a swing at sometimes and get a pretty good deal. So that's again why I suggest, price it out and build the dream house, build all those options in there when you write that purchase agreement. When they send it into the sales manager, they're going to see we've got a lot of meat in here in terms of what they've added on, and then there's nothing in the purchase agreement that says you can't back that out.
I want to add to this, when you're shopping for deals for people, or if you have leads saying they're considering new construction, I have found that the best time to get a deal is just before parade of homes in the fall. We know that they're going to throw all, like,
Mhm.
everything in the kitchen sink into that fall parade incentive. It's a little bit better than spring parade typically when they can count on the majority of people interested in new construction build. So there's a lot of incentives that go into that fall build. And if you are working with cash buyers, that is an ideal time to get the best deal on a property as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. We're past that point this year, but if you're working with leads spring, summer next year who are considering new construction and they want a deal, even if it's not a cash offer, if it's a financed offer, you will see that they're offering the most incentives for upgrades. And typically the lender incentive is the best incentive at that time as well.
Yeah, well, and you know, the last couple of years incentives have been rare, if not non-existent, because they didn't have to offer them. We're starting to see a return to that, so you know, the norm is, yeah, or you know, this X amount of dollars towards options and upgrades. Always ask if you can just do it this way, price out the dream house, and then offer based on that. Because like I said, that sales manager is going to see $100,000 in options, and that's a pretty big chunk of profitability. So there's going to be room to work with off of that number. We talk about offers. This one's pretty straightforward. Most of these builders are going to have their own paperwork. On the semi-custom side, a smaller builder is just going to ask you to, more often than not, write it on a standard purchase agreement or a new construction purchase agreement. Frankly, the best way to go about it is to just send the pertinent details in an email, and then have them float it verbally. If it's a non-starter, then okay. But if it's something that they're gonna work with, they'll come back and say, okay, great, we'll just transfer that to our process. You can review it. So that's, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. If you just ask, how do you guys do things? They'll tell you.
There's a- You go ahead. Okay. I was gonna say that-
There's a little bit of reverse psychology in this, I found, right? So it's so much harder to turn a person down in person. If you just email over the initial offer, you don't have to deal with the sales rep who's trained.
This is assuming that you've been there and met with the sales rep.
Yeah,
Well, I usually do, but
it's a good way to just kind of get that offer out there, especially if you're coming in with like lower number or something like that. If, you know, after you price it out, like Andy has said, now you're offering through an email, they know that you're serious about buying. You just made an offer, maybe it's a low offer and you're trying to get a deal on it. But you don't have to worry about them kind of trying to make you feel uncomfortable by sitting in person and offering it to them in person. So.
Yeah, in fact, the builder that I worked for, we had just a one-page offer form. It had 6 details on it. Just ask the agent, what do you want? And I'll send it in. So it's pretty straightforward, but yeah, just ask the rep. They'll tell you what they prefer or how they do it.
yep, most.
National builders, actually, I would mention today, all national builders I've worked with, they require that the representative write the purchase agreement in person in their office.
Yeah.
Local option
Builder.
builders, more often than not, will say, hey,
Email it to me, but I have my own
forms to use, and once we come to an agreement, I'll write it on my
Contact.
And
And
then
then
some
some
custom
custom
builders
builders-
tend to be a little bit different in my experience. And they might say you can use the new construction purchase agreement and write it whatever model it is or something, or plan that your clients are buying and the details of that. But then you just have to add or include the builder's addendums that kind of specify the limited liability for some of the product.
Yep. In a lot of cases, like if you're buying a model home or a spec home, the builder actually doesn't own that home. They have a third party holding company do it because they insure it, and then it's not on the builder's books. So if they have 2 model homes and you know 4 spec homes, that's $3-4 million worth of capital that's not on their books. So your buyers will end up signing a form that says XYZ company actually owns this house. You can't sue them. What do we got next?
That's
I think
it.
that's it.
Okay.
Let's open it up for like 5 minutes of Q&A.
Any
questions
questions?
online or in person here about the construction process?
Shoot.
For like Lennar, those, the new construction that you're already going in, it's pretty much already built. Are your clients wanting to have third-party inspections? Are you having that? Because I just ran into that.
Sure.
Like, what is that?
It's a pretty common question, but that's where it's good to kind of review that at each and every one of those stages, the city is required to do all of those inspections before they get a certificate of occupancy. In other words, they can't sell the house until all of that's checked. And I promise you, those are much more thorough than a structure tech going in there and doing
gonna
it once over.
I'm gonna disagree.
Here's
Here's why.
I'm gonna disagree. Okay.
Okay, I just have to throw out two options, like
I've
I've
done a
done,
lot of new construction and it really is builder dependent. The two SW Wolf and Pulte are the two I've had terrible experiences with. So I think it's case by case, but number one, you have to write that term into your agreement up front that you're gonna have an inspection, okay? Number two, I always tell my clients, there's no harm in doing it because worst case scenario, they're just gonna have their punch list for them, right? So if they wanna
Yeah.
make the cost, they've got a punch list to go through with the builder when it comes time for their walkthrough. And they can keep that as kind of a maintenance checklist for those first couple of years they own a home. 2 times I have had builder inspectors do their certificate of occupancy, doing a drive-by inspection and certifying just based on what they saw. And both of those clients, when that happened, ended up with no insulation.
I've never had that.
Not a single speck of insulation in their attic. One of them closed in September, the other closed in October, and it was not until they had major ice damming issues and their furnace was running nonstop with a $600+ a month heating bill, that it came out that this was an issue. And the builders had to come back and fix roof damage and ice buildup on roof trusses and actually insulate everything, reseal the attic, and then they covered all of the expenses that my clients incurred. So, one time is a fool, 2 times teaches you a lesson, right? Fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Because of those experiences, I will always recommend to my clients that they have an inspection done, and then best case scenario, there's no issues, and you have a maintenance checklist for yourself. Worst case scenario, there's a few things that have to be fixed, and you've got a punch list to go through with the builder.
And I'm gonna just part of that warranty appointment anyway, that you do.
Right,
And I had Marigold come out and do the inspection for my client's new construction home. And Marigold said to them, call us back in 11 months, we'll come back out and do your 1-year checkup before that 1 year actually hits, let you know if there's anything that needs to be, that you should probably have the builder come back and fix before that warranty is up. So Marigold was including that, like, it was an additional like $100 or something, but it seemed not advertising that. It's a super deal, so that just happened, I just called my client last week and said, heads up, this is your 11-month like timeline. Call Marigold, get them back in, because I don't have the reminder.
Yeah.
So, I know.
What a great touch point.
Yeah, I had a client recently do a third-party inspection on Lennar, and it was fine, but they were all like, oh, like, we never do, like, so I'm like, okay, what's everyone doing? You know, so that answers me. I just don't think
Yeah.
we should ever assume that a new construction doesn't need an inspection. Yeah, I fully leave it up to the buyer.
I think quality new construction, I don't know if this is, I feel like quality new construction. Shit.
Yeah.
depends on, I think it's very, it depends on the builder. Sometimes it fieldstone, yeah, fieldstone. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a few builders that have worse reputations than others. But yeah, small price to pay for some peace of mind and just to have a more thorough and in-depth punch list for when that time comes.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
Well, yeah,
that's what I recommend.
let's put it that way. What's that one? What else?
And I'm sure like every company out there has that, like, someone that's expert on that, love their experience, so it really just gonna
What
depend
about-
on. They-
There's no builder that's so bad you should totally avoid them. I think it's more of a, just a cautionary.
That was builder
insight
I
to bring.
I would never.
I don't know about that, there have been some like, not locally, but there have been some like back when we used to do mortgages where it's like. There are some where it's like they have like a 1-star review on Google, they have like 100 reviews, so it's like, but people keep using it.
And I think, but then you brought that up, I think so much of that has to do with, those are probably people who didn't have representation.
Yes,
So they
yeah,
had a
sure.
miserable experience in
Right.
building a house
Because
because,
they went into the model home.
yeah,
And
and
they
they
put on the
they
model
have
home.
expectations
Yeah,
that,
and then they
that,
have
and their
these
only source
expectations.
of communication is with the builder themselves.
And I'm sure this has been said too, but inspection is important too, because I've dealt with some builders where the guy who you're doing the blue tape walkthrough with, he tries to like. Make it seem like not.
Talk you out of it.
Yeah, he's like, that, all of it, that's perfectly fine, like, no, they don't. It's like, this might be the first house I bought, but it's not mine, so. A lot of times the builder's guy will be like, that's no big, that's no big, it's like, well, it is.
Because we were able to.
But inspection just like shows that.
We gotta wrap it up.
I think.
Yep.
Okay.
Guys,
All
that's a
done.
wrap.
For
Today, we have to slide back to, just wanted to say thank you very much for attending. And
What's up, buddy?
Coordinators, if you've got questions about new construction,